What's something that happened on a first date that made you decide against a second date? She kept writing to her friends on WhatsApp a play-by-play of the date instead of listening to me. So I stood up, paid my dinner and left because I found it disrespectful. He used his pocket knife to cut me a slice of cake and later scraped some dirt clumps off of his shoe with the same knife. I asked him if he ever cleaned his knife, and he replied, "No, why?" He also confessed that he was madly in love with me the same day. We had just met. He tried to change my order with the waitress because I didn't order what he'd recommended. I picked her up and she asked me if we could stop by her mom's house so she could run in and grab something. I said sure, made the stop. She went inside. 5 minutes later, she comes out hustling towards the car with a car seat and her mom chasing after her yelling. She opens the car door and throws the car seat, which I now see has a baby in it, and starts yelling at me to drive. I freaked and just turned my car off and took the keys out of the ignition. Her mom called the cops, and they came and questioned all of us for a good while. Turns out she had lost custody due to drug use and was trying to use me as a way to get her kid back. We never made it to dinner, and I just went home after the cops left. The guy told me he would still be together with his kid's mum if she had apologized for what she did wrong. Out of curiosity, I asked what she did wrong. Was expecting something like she cheated. You know, something that actually needed apologizing for. Nope. Apparently she kept nagging one day and wouldn't shut up. So he tied her to a computer chair and went out for 3 hours and left her there. I said it doesn't sound like she was the one who needed to apologize and left. While we were having lunch, we ran into some friend of hers I didn't know, and he stopped to say hi, and their brief conversation somehow brought up that she owed the guy a meal because he'd paid for their last lunch together. So she offered to pay for his lunch to square it away, and he agreed. He ordered something to go and they told the waitress she'd pay for it. They both said their goodbyes, and the guy left us alone to go wait for his lunch at some other table. So far so good. Though their conversation was a bit strange, it did seem like it came up organically. It didn't needlessly drag on, and the guy was nice at all times, and also polite enough to make himself scarce as soon as possible, instead of inserting himself into our lunch date with the excuse that he was waiting for his food. So we continued our conversation and everything seemed fine, until sometime later after the friend had already left and it was time to settle our check. And I realized this girl obviously expected me to pay for the whole thing, including the lunch. She offered to pay for her friend as a way to pay him back for the favor he did her. Now, even if the friend hadn't ordered a pretty pricey meal that cost more than the rest of our check put together, and he had done exactly that, it didn't sit well with me how she had shamelessly decided to pay him back with my money in what seemed like a deliberate scam. So I paid for the whole thing in order to avoid making a scene, but later brought it up and told her that it wasn't cool. She made it clear that she saw nothing wrong with it and said I was being cheap and childish. So I thanked her for her honesty and told her we were done, and I wasn't going to be calling her again. She tried to argue that I was overreacting, but I held firm and blocked her a couple of days later because she insisted on texting me to convince me that I was wrong and we should go out again. Some people really live in an alternate dimension. She took her hands off the wheel and said, "You think I'm crazy?" I literally jumped out at the next light. Said, "You're a really good kisser, Amber. My name is Ashley." He just kept making a weird amount of jokes about tapeworms. Told me that aliens cause jet lag, and that I have the ghost of a fisherman following me around named Samuel. On top of the 20 other crazy things she said at dinner. This was last night. I asked about his hobbies and he said, "I play the bagpipes." I thought that was really cool and asked him to tell me more. He says, "Are you sure?" I said yes. He proceeds to go on about bagpipes for the rest of the night. How he felt playing the bagpipes was his calling in life. How he needed to carry his grandfather's legacy, who also played the bagpipes. How his dream was to play bagpipes for the Queen. His favorite brand of bagpipes. The anatomy of bagpipes. Every topic was somehow turned back to bagpipes. To be fair, I did say yes to him telling me more. I hope he's doing well and found someone just as passionate about bagpipes. Met a girl at a friend's party. We were both in our mid-20s. Ended up spending 3 hours talking, and she was so funny, charming, gorgeous, and carefree. I asked her out and got a wonderful "I would love to" from her. I show up about 4 days later at the restaurant she picked, one within walking distance of her place. She arrived about 5 minutes later. "Nice place," I say, as I get her chair for her. "Since it's so close, do you eat here often?" She scowls and responds, "You know, you ask too many darn questions." I was floored. Everything continued downhill from there. Within about 20 minutes, she just got up and left. I felt as if she had failed to tell me the other night that she had an evil twin. And that's who showed up this evening. Later, when I ran into my buddy, I asked what the heck was up. "Oh yeah," he said, "she's a piece of work until she gets a few drinks in her. Then she's adorable." Thanks a lot, buddy. One was the time I took this girl to dinner, and she could not stop staring at our waiter. I'll grant her one thing. I'm a guy, and can admit this guy was probably totally hot for anyone who prefers men, square-jawed and muscled college athlete type. I get it, but I didn't appreciate that she literally craned her neck every time the kitchen door swung open to see if he was walking out. Eventually, I gave her enough cash to pay for my part of the meal, told her I'd noticed as though I couldn't have, suggested to her that she could get his contact info when she paid the bill, and left. First, he tried to force a kiss. Second, he tried to get me to agree to marry him the next week. No, he wasn't an immigrant. Third, he said women were stupid and would believe anything he told them. I am a woman. Fourth, he said it was okay to drown puppies. It was actually humane. Fifth, he swore that it was impossible to get AIDS if you were straight. Found out a week later that he knew the whole time he was HIV positive. That's just some of them. I'm imaging all these are the same guy, lol. He got us pulled over. Car was searched, and he had a brick of coke in the trunk. I almost got arrested. He finally vouched this was a blind date, and I was innocent. He told me his 14-year-old cousin seduced him when he was 21, and it was somehow her fault. He molested her because she was asking for it, and she knew he hadn't had any in a long time, and he had recently been released from prison for it. Very recent. Asked when I would get a real career. I love what I do. I'm a union stagehand in a major entertainment city. I have been in my industry for over 20 years. Toured the country, toured the world, make a comfortable living. Y'all know. That's pretty demeaning, and I'm out. Phone going off with messages from multiple other females, which he showed me for some strange reason. Felt like he was trying to make himself more appealing, or me jealous on a first date weirdo. And anyone that texts you up in the middle of the night after a first date, no thank you, ma'am. She clicked her fingers at the waitress, stunning but vapid as heck. Went on a date with a woman from the office. Thought we had good chemistry and got along well. She couldn't find her phone, so I tried calling it and someone from the restaurant answered. I went back in for her to get it, and the waiter showed me. I was saved in her contacts under free food. We realized we were cousins. The waitress was a lovely young black woman. He referred to her as being attractive for a colored. He touched her, which is not okay. You don't touch your waitress. Made aggressive looks at another table where a family was dining. They were what looked to be Indian, and commented loudly that they were what was wrong with America. Had multiple tequila shots. His cologne stank to high heaven. I was so embarrassed. I was raised to be patient and polite, but finally I was like, what am I doing still here? I stood up and left, leaving my half-eaten meal on the table. He yelled insults at me as I was leaving. Then, when I was out the door, texted me. Pure trash. Went to dinner with a girl who I'd been crushing on for quite some time. It seemed to be going well, and we ended up back at her place, watching a movie or something. Out of nowhere, her boyfriend, of whom was not aware, came back from out of town and stopped in unexpectedly. He and I had a super awkward conversation for a few minutes. Then the two of them disappeared into another room for a minute or two. She came back and said something to the effect of, I don't have a place for you. I'm sorry. I just kind of got in my car and drove home, with one of the strangest feelings that I'd ever felt. At some point, A few minutes into the journey, I couldn't contain myself and busted out laughing. Share your first date stories in the comments and check out our other videos.